Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Josh.
Yeah, man, I think it's great to have you here. And for anybody watching or listening, I need to just out of the gate, even after the intro here, thank you for the work you've done for helping our business all these years. And it's been great to kind of watch your journey as you've been watching ours. And now we get to kind of talk about it a little bit here. I'm excited to have you on.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great to have both of our businesses parallel in our growth and to watch, what's happening. Also, I'm also at the same time learning from you guys because you're basically trying to build the same model in a different industry and in a different service. So it's been
Yeah,
great. Yeah.
it's totally it's a meta event that's happening. One remote business helping the other, and now we're going to talk about it remotely on a remote podcast.
That's great.
So folks have heard a little bit about you from the intro, but I'd love for you to talk about Reconciled, just kind of basic elevator pitch. How do you help businesses? What service do you deliver?
Yeah. So Reconciled is an online bookkeeping service for entrepreneurs. And at the end of the day, what we're delivering is peace of mind, right? So we know that for most entrepreneurs, one of the top reasons they fail in the first 5 years of business is they do not know how to manage their finances. And most entrepreneurs don't know how to manage it. They don't know how to read it, analyze it, don't know what decisions to make. So our goal is to make that easy, make that consistent, make that accurate, and give a peace of mind to the entrepreneur that it's being done correctly. And we want to use the latest technology to do that, as well as the best team and service experience. So that's Reconciled.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's funny because I don't really know anybody who got into business for themselves in order to like run the books and think about their finance side of things. So no, and speaking firsthand, right? It's just been a massive value add to our business. It's helped us focus and keep the main thing the main thing. So can vouch firsthand.
Yeah,
But
no, that's great. Yeah, no, and I you're right. I think entrepreneurs, they don't tell you in Wired magazine or Fast Company or other places like, hey, start a business. Oh yeah, you're going to be doing bookkeeping for yourself. No one gets jazzed up for that, right? No one, there's
yeah,
a lot of things, and that's one at the top. It's probably the worst thing you could do as an entrepreneur is try it. It's just not great. But what's great is there are people out there that do love bookkeeping, and they are accounting people, right? They're trained to do accounting. They love it. They wake up, they live and breathe for it. So those are the people we hire, and we hire the people that want to do that for other entrepreneurs.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So you've built this company, a service-based company, remote to this point, but at the beginning, you started off kind of local where you are in Burlington. So walk us through a little bit of kind of the genesis story of kind of like where you decided to kind of plant your flag and then, maybe how things changed or how they evolved as you thought about scaling.
Yeah. So I was living here. I'm raising my kids here. I was doing CFO consulting work and noticed that every small business and startup I was working with, the books were being done by the entrepreneur, so they were wrong, or by a spouse or a girlfriend or the receptionist or a board member or you name it, but not a trained accounting professional. So they were always short of accurate or short of what they should be. And it made my job as CFO very challenging. So I spent the summer of 15 coming up through the concept of Reconciled. I worked with an early co-founder of the business. She was a consultant consulting me, and then we launched August of 15 our website. I hired a full-time bookkeeper, and we started acquiring customers. And a lot of the early days was acquiring customers through word of mouth, LinkedIn posts, letting people know about it, letting my clients know that I was able to offer bookkeeping for them as well as CFO consulting. And in the beginning, this first-time bookkeeper and actually the second bookkeeper that I hired too that year, they worked in the same office as I did. And early on, I did that one because I didn't know what I didn't know. And I had to train them on our processes. We were building them on the fly of what the customer experience would be like for remote companies to have us do accounting for them. As we began to define more and more what all that looked like, we then began looking at how do we scale this now? Now that we have the service component down, now we know that there's a demand for it, there's a business model for it. how do we scale this? Well, it meant being able to access talent wherever they are. And so that's really where then the idea of a distributor remote model came from. And that was within the first 6 months. I had to really think critically through that, because I wanted to grow Reconciled fast. And I wanted to do that without the same constraint that everyone says is I can't find talent, right? And with the lowest unemployment in history right now in our country, and with Vermont being at less than 2% unemployment rate, so the lowest in the country, I didn't want that to be an excuse to stop me from growing. So distributed model was definitely a huge factor early on in growing this business.
Yeah, and in a service business too, I mean, you really truly are only as good as the people that are on your team. So why create that constraint artificially and work yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, if the best, I knew in the beginning I wanted to use cloud-based tools. I wanted to use QuickBooks Online and other cloud-based accounting software. So if I was using software that wasn't sitting on my computer, why wouldn't I use a human resource that was not sitting in my office and find the best ones out there that would love what we're doing and be a part of this growth? And so I found myself not having to sell Reconciled to people to join us as a startup. I didn't have to convince them to take a risk. I said, this is what we're trying to do. If you want to do this, I don't care where you live, come join us. And that became a much easier process to sell to people in the beginning. It doesn't mean we didn't vet them. We had to vet them, and we had to make sure they knew what they were doing. But we were able to focus a lot of our time on, are they going to be a great fit for our culture and what we want to build and what I want to build with Reconciled? So that's been great.
That's awesome. And just practically speaking, how do people work? Do they work out of their homes? Do they work out of offices? I know you're in an office now with a really cool brick background that I commented on. What's the lay of the land there?
Yeah, so it's funny. I run a remote work from home business, but I can't work from home. I'm the only employee that can't, because I've got young kids at home, and they're distracting, and they won't not bother me when I'm working. So early on, I went and got my own office, and now I actually started a co-working space here in Burlington, Vermont. So other entrepreneurs and freelancers and remote employees work here as well, and I get to rub shoulders with them and see what they're doing. But all the employees for Reconcile do work from home. That there's no requirement to come to an office. There's no requirement to meet in person. The only times we do, if we do in persons, is we do twice a year in-person retreats for our staff. So we actually fly them mostly to Burlington, Vermont. We did our last one in Charlotte at our second location. Mm-hmm. But that's a time for us to actually connect and basically bring together what we're doing virtually, right? The relationships, the connections, building our culture. So yeah, everyone works from home, and they're working in the peace and quiet of their home while their kids are at school or while their spouses are away. And they're required to make a home environment that works well for them and that allows them to still do professional work and concentrated work, because accounting obviously can be tedious. So you need to have concentrated time. And then you also need a professional environment, because you're going to do a video call or a Skype call or a phone call with a customer, and you don't want a dog barking in the background or a baby crying or a naked spouse running around. So that's how we built that company, and so that's been a big requirement for the firm.
We're all one naked spouse away from losing a client, it seems.
Exactly. Yes. We're almost always there. Yeah, exactly.
Incredible. So almost universally, everybody I've spoken to so far as a guest on this podcast or as a founder of a team that's following the distributed model, the in-person company meetup is just universal. I mean, and the frequency at which people meet is different, but I got to pick your brain. I got to ask kind of, what does that look like? What are you trying to accomplish with those in-person meetups? And then, maybe how do you structure some of the time together? What does that look like?
Yeah, no, those are good questions. So what are they trying to accomplish? I know that there is only so much we can do as a virtual company to bridge the gap between the experiences, the kind of interpersonal, intangible experiences you get being in the same building, in the same room, bumping into each other, hearing the side conversations, hearing the personal and professional gossip, getting the quick questions and answers mixed, and seeing the verbal and nonverbal cues, right, that go on in an office. The virtual tools we have today still can only get you so far. And so what we're trying to accomplish with the in-persons is take what we're doing virtually, and you've got to do it in a concentrated amount of time, 2 to 3 days, a retreat weekend or a retreat week. You got to build into that time almost like relationship development on steroids, right? So it's like speed dating, but it's an arranged marriage. So it's like you guys aren't dating, you guys are all employees, you're married, and you just haven't met each other in person. You've had a long distance relationship, and you've been waiting for the visa to come through, and here's the visas here coming in, right? So you come together, and the experience is so rich. People have seen each other on video, they've talked to each other, they've Slacked with each other, they've sent each other emojis, and now that it's filled with this, wow, like the person I'm seeing in person, like I know you, but I don't really know you.
Yeah.
So you get to have those experiences now, and it becomes almost like if you've ever been to summer camp or a retreat when you're a kid, and you're like, can life be any better than, can these friends, will I ever lose these friends? You just feel so bonded with people. Or you go on a mission trip or a service project with some people, you get so deep with them. That's what the retreats are supposed to be. It's bonding. It's reinforcing the mission and reminding people we're on this big mission together to help entrepreneurs. And these are your teammates. These are the soldiers you're fighting with, and you're doing battle with together. And you can only do that in person. It's very difficult to do that virtually. So we're doing it twice a year now. As the company gets bigger, the number of times we do it gets less because of the expense. Yeah. But we're trying to be creative about that too and make the times more meaningful. So twice a year we do some training during that time. We do vision casting. We'll have some fun. We did our last one was in Charlotte a few months ago, and we did a history comedy tour of the whole city on a bus with drinks. Nice. We did bowling night, just fun stuff. And accounts are pretty tame, so I can't be doing a rave or anything like that. But so we try to do some fun things together. It's really great.
Oh man, that is awesome. Yeah. So if you think about it now, so that's great. I think that's a great mix. So you've got to mix work and play, and a lot of the stuff is caught versus taught, right? Mm-hmm. When you're rubbing shoulders with each other. But as you think about scaling, you're talking about how the times that you're meeting together get less and less frequent. As you're thinking about a team twice the size of now, like how do you envision, is it just a line item that you just got to budget more for it? Or what are some of the ways that you think you might be able to bring that together if you're willing to talk about it at this point?
Yeah, no, that's great. So I believe with any remote, with any organization that's in services like us, one, as you get bigger, you have to figure out how to leverage technology to get more gross margin out of your business. So as your company gets into more and more maturity, you should be able to produce more revenue per employee. You should be able to produce better gross margin. The types of clients you bring in should be higher value clients. So therefore, the amount of money you have now to put towards a retreat is there. And so when I think about scaling, one is we could be all together. We could be together in 2 separate locations, but doing it, and do virtual components for that. Mm-hmm. We could randomize it so that it's actually, multiple locations. We also, what we're playing with now and we're doing now is we're going to actually throw a conference together. And we stole this idea from the founder and CEO of Dribble, where they were facing the same dilemma. As they got bigger and bigger, it became more expensive. And so they said, well, why don't we throw a conference on for our customers, our vendors, anybody that wants to come learn from us? We'll get, it'll be like any, like another entrepreneur conference. We'll have a focus, a theme. We'll have a keynote speakers, workshops. But the fees and the money made from that conference will pay for the rest of the retreat. So now, brilliant. Yeah, you as a owner and you as a leadership team, you don't have to feel pressure about creating content for a whole day, right? You have a whole day worth of content at the conference that workshop speakers and outside speakers are creating, and your staff's a part of that. And then the next day you do your staff retreat, or the whole weekend after you do your staff retreat. So now you have more money to spend on doing even more fun stuff or making even more extravagant for your team. So we're experimenting with that. And I think I don't have all the answers. We're kind of looking at people that are a little farther ahead than us that are doing remote and learning from them as well. And these are some of the ideas they're putting out there and that have worked for them. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see how do you get 40, 50 people together? How do you get 100 people together? Or do you do it in 5 different locations and stream it? I'm excited to experience all those opportunities and experiments that we can try.
Dude, I love that about you, man. Speaking from personal experience, right? Like you're like the repurposer. You're like the two birds, one stone guy. I mean, it's in your office. You're like, I need an office, so I'll turn it into a shared space. Like you're like, I need a group retreat. Let's make an event out of it. I love that, man. So resourceful.
That's
Um,
great. Yeah.
so couple of follow-up questions for you. So who are, and I know it's hard to be kind of quizzed in the middle of this, but who are some of the people that you're looking to as resources or as people who have gone before? I know the CEO of Dribble is one just for this event thing, but who are some of the voices, some of the resources, some of the things that you're tuning into?
Yeah,
Uh,
so
of your
we're finding surprisingly not surprisingly that the tools we're using to keep the group together virtually. So we're using Slack, we're using Trello, we're using Zapier, we're using Zoom. A lot of these companies are remote based companies. They've built their teams remote, and they've grown a much bigger than us, and much faster than us. And a lot of them are software companies, so they have different challenges and better profit margins, but we can learn from them. And so I've been trying to follow and hear their voices online. There's obviously conferences now being put on about remote work. And so we're tuning into those conferences, both me and my HR recruiter that works for us. And we're learning from them on what are the tricks of the trade, what are the tools, what are the types of retreats people are doing, and what do ultimately employees value? As you get bigger, does your team value those retreats anymore, or do they value something else? Would they rather do a small retreat with a cluster of people they work with closely virtually, or do they really want to be at the big 100-person gathering, or do they even want to be at a conference that you put on? So we're learning all that, and I think that we're going to learn more and more as we grow. We're trying to double every year. We're going to end the year at about 24, 25 FTEs. And then we'll try to end next year at 50 FTEs. So as we
yeah,
continue to grow, it's going to be, I think, a great learning experience, but also fun to try things out. But yeah, CEO Trello, Zapier, Slack, all those companies we're kind of learning from right now and listening to what they're doing, and the speakers at these conferences.
totally. That's awesome.
Yeah.
One thing I meant to ask earlier and I forgot, but I noticed that, when you're putting out job postings, because you guys are growing fast, you're hiring aggressively, I see you posting it regionally. So like, hey, are there any Vermont bookkeepers? Are there any North Carolina bookkeepers? What's driving that strategy? Are you looking to kind of create clusters, even though they're remote, or what's going on there?
Yeah. So there's actually, I would probably 3 primary reasons. One is, and this is a kind of free advice for everyone building a business, remote business out there, is every team member you hire in a different state, if they're an employee, you create immediate tax nexus for yourself and your business. So if you're especially if you're running a pass-through entity like an S corp or a LLC or a partnership, all of a sudden, let's say you have employees in 12 different states. Well, you now have a tax return that you're required to file in every state. So being the accounting person in my background, I knew I don't want that. I do not want to deal with that. It's great to have Sally in that resource, but it's really a pain to file in that state, their tax return, and to claim certain taxes and certain revenue and expenses when only one employee is over there. So
Yeah.
I really wanted to justify the tax nexus creation and make administration simpler. Secondly is the pod structure, like you're talking about. Having that kind of group of employees, even though they're all working from home, having them centered in one state, one city, allowed them to get together when they wanted to get together. And even if they're not working with each other, they can still get together because they're part of the same team company. And then the third is I looked primarily at states that was one flight away from Burlington. So,
Mm.
I thought strategically through even though this is going to be remote, how do I get there fast if something hits the fan, right? If I need to go and take care of an employee, if a long-time employee, if I need to let one go and they've been with me for a while, I want to give them the courtesy of doing that in person. If I need to fly them back here, if there's a family emergency for stuff, I want all those. I thought through all those things and went one flight away from Burlington. That limited me to about 6 cities, right? And
Yep.
so those are the cities we looked at for ramping up physical offices, sales offices. And then if we want to do a retreat, it makes the cost in time way more affordable because they just come straight to Burlington on a nonstop flight. So
That's a
just really
great
thinking through
long-term
the
vision.
strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Brilliant. That's gold, man. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what we
no,
got to dig for. That's the good stuff.
yeah, no, definitely, yeah. It's
So,
it's been great. It's been good. I think it's been a good strategy. I think until talent runs out of these particular places, and I think if you are strategic about it, you can exhaust the great talent in some of these places before you have to worry about adding other cities or states.
yep. No, absolutely. And having 6x, the potential reach of candidates is obviously a massive,
Yeah.
massive advantage. Even if you're not in all, 50 states or whatever, it still gives you a broad, broad pool to hire from. Yeah. Describe for me, if you would, the culture at Reconciled.
Oh, that's a great question. I, they say that the culture of a company is representative of its founder, and then it's then also representative of its subsequent leaders. So I wanted to build a company that I wanted to work at, and I would, I thought to myself, what values would I want in the company and in the leader that I would admire, that I would want to follow and give my life to, and give my most of my time to. So a big value for me is transparency, and I always found it odd that in most places you worked, for most of us who worked, that there was your professional life, and then there was everything else in your private life, and generally those centered around things like family, politics, religion, things you volunteered at. You generally didn't talk about those things, at work. You talked about work at work, and you might have talked about like extracurricular activities a little bit, some of your hobbies. But I always find it puzzling. Like, I don't really know you. I don't know you, but I spend a lot of time with you. I spend like 50 hours a week with you.
Yeah.
What's going on? Why is it like this in our culture? Why is there's this separation? And I think the millennial generation, the generation that's the largest in the workforce now, I think they value transparency. Right, we're in the age of that. So I really wanted to take that to heart. So I built Reconcile to be very transparent. I share about my life. I tell candidates, if you're not comfortable hearing about people's personal stories or the CEO's personal stories, or about our political beliefs or religious beliefs, which also means you all can share your own too. There's no pressure here. Somebody's have to be right or wrong. This is just our diversity, our transparency is a benefit because the entrepreneurs we serve are diverse, right? And that's the key is we need to be diverse. We have to be diverse because our entrepreneurs are diverse. They're going to come with different backgrounds, different political beliefs, different values. But the common theme they're going to have is they want the service and the value that we're providing through our service, of giving peace of mind. But no one profile of an entrepreneur. They're so diverse. So I wanted to mimic that. So that's, I think, number one is just complete transparency. I share a lot with the staff about my life. And the staff shares too, and they're not afraid to, and they enjoy that part, their aspect. And if you're working from home and remotely, it can get very lonely and isolating. You
Mhm.
might have a check-in with 2 or 3 people during the week. So out of your 40 plus hour week, you're going to literally see on video 3 or 4 different people, maybe out of your 40-hour week. Imagine that isolation compared to being in an office.
Mhm.
So the only way to circumvent that is that we have to build deep connectedness with each other. And you can only do that if the real person's in front of you, right?
Yeah.
If the real person's being presented to you and not the professional fake person. So we're trying to create that connection between the employees and between, leadership team and employees. And everyone in the leadership teams is expected to model it. and to share about, what's going on. And so one of the tools we use to help facilitate it, as we have a tool called Donut. It connects to Slack.
Okay.
And Donut, what Donut does is it randomizes a virtual coffee date for your team members. So you select, you want 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, and then Donut every Monday, it says, hey, this week your virtual coffee date is with this employee or with these 2 employees, these 2 team members, and set up your coffee date and then give feedback on Donut of how it went. Right. And so
That's
really,
awesome.
that's one way we facilitate that. And then the other way we facilitate is we have a dedicated Zoom account that's always on. And that room is always on. So anybody can pop in like literally a water cooler. It's just pop in and say hi. And so some employees will just have it on all day. They'll just have it on. And if somebody pops in and say hi, they're working. Everyone knows if you're working and you're not talking that you're not being rude. It's a rule. And if you need to leave and pop out of the room for a call, you can do that. But it lets people feel like a space for a water cooler moment without a physical water cooler in front of them. Right. So that's like some of the things we've been trying out, and it's been great. It's been really, really fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's so funny. My daughter's in kindergarten and they have this thing that they're trying in schools now called the buddy bench. You know what the buddy bench, where like, it's great. It's like for kids that like, they don't have anybody to play with necessarily in the moment. So they go to the buddy bench and they sit down and other people will come and sit down next to them. It's like the professional version of the buddy bench. I love that.
That is awesome. Oh man, I wish we had that as kids, man. It would have made friends a lot easier.
You're like, my scarring would be so much less if we only had a buddy bench. Yeah.
We actually had to go and like get rejected and looked down upon, right? And not get picked for the kickball team and like have the girl look at you funny. Like all those things like we had to experience. So now the buddy bench, wow, that's great. That's really great.
I love that, man. So it sounds like, you've really, in terms of trying to establish that culture, it's just start with modeling it. Like you said, it's starting with the founder, starting with the people that are in leadership, and it's perpetuated that way. It's funny too how there's kind of this continuity between like your home and work life are mixed if you work from home already, and so like there's continuity between what you're sharing with those people because they're in your home. So
right. Yeah. And we've kind of, it's funny, we have welcomed people into our home virtually, and so why would we hide who we really are? That's the whole point. The whole point, the values of the reason why a lot of the reasons why people are doing remote work. And mind you, a lot of the times remote work means you're taking right now, at least for a lot of companies, you're taking advantage of, for the employer, for us as Reconciled, we're taking advantage of the fact that there's a value to remote work. So we're saving the employee commute time, gas. They're giving them their time back so that they can live their personal lives. They can get involved in a yoga class they wanted to do locally. They can run for PTO or city council. They can do a lot of stuff. Yeah. Well, there's value to that. So remote employees are taking sometimes up to 30% less on salary they could be making if they commute, right? If they drive into the city. But there's a huge value to that. So their value is, I want to be home. I want to be with family. I want to be available. I want more flexibility. Well, if you want all that, that's great. Then we share something in common. So let's talk about all the things we're doing with that flexibility. How are we living our lives? That I think it facilitates what's funny, even though it's virtual, it has the opportunity to facilitate deeper friendships. Totally. Even though it's virtual. So it's an odd reversal than if I have to commute to the office and I have to rush out because the commute's an hour long and I feel stressed because about it, and I'm not in my kids' lives, and I don't want to share with you what's happening in my family because this job is killing me. It's reversed now. I'm at home. I feel free. The weight's lifted off. I've saved 10 hours of my week back, and I get to pour into my family and my kids. I'm so proud of my kids. I got to go to the meeting with the teacher. I just came back from it, because I have this remote job, so all those things are interesting with remote work of how it's actually bringing people down deeper, and people who would have never met each other because it's remote. So you're meeting people across the country, and for some companies, the world, you would have never met with. And now you have a friend in Eastern Europe, or a friend in Australia, or a friend in Thailand, or you have a random digital nomad that's going everywhere, right? And so my sales guy, he took his family for 2 months and worked from Puerto Rico, January and February. That experience would not have been possible if he didn't work for us. It would have not been
Yeah.
possible at all. And he got to share with the rest of the company that experience every day. He stayed in an apartment right on the beach in Puerto Rico. He did all the sales. He'd send us funny pictures of him sitting in a chair in the ocean doing a
That's
sales call,
awesome.
just kind of joking around about it. But he got to provide his family an experience. And so his whole family benefited from remote work, not just himself. And that
Yeah.
was so satisfying. Like, if I do nothing else, knowing that piece that I'm doing that for the employees and that we're able to create that for the experience is so satisfying. It doesn't matter how big we get, it's
It's
just
awesome.
that piece alone. So it's really interesting how it's facilitated that, even though we're not in the same office.
Yeah, totally. No, it is such a weird, and I think that's even beyond a work environment. It's an interesting
Oh
observation
yeah.
about relationships that people like gamers. There's stories
Yeah.
of gamers who I literally met somebody who I don't want to get off too far on a tangent here, but I literally met somebody who met their husband on some gaming site. Like they were gaming together. It sprouted into a relationship and it grew into a marriage. And like,
Yeah.
so yeah, whether it's a work environment, whether it's just overall
Yeah.
friendships in life, there is this
Yeah.
weird, yeah,
Yeah, and think about the missed opportunity I would have had with you and TJ, at Ember
right.
Tribe. If you
Yep.
guys were like, well, we got to find, Sally Sue to come to our office every day in Boston or Mass, or imagine like you guys wouldn't have started your companies in two different states
Yep.
without, doing that. So the missed opportunity I would have had, you would have had to build a relationship. And yeah, could you have found somebody locally? Sure. Could you have found somebody to come to your office? Sure. Would the outcome be the same? I don't think so. I don't believe so.
Yeah.
So we're able to create relationships with some of the best people in the world that wasn't possible before, and we're using tools, a lot of which are free to use, to do
Right.
that. That's amazing.
It is amazing.
We're just in a unique time, so that's really, really great.
So I gotta ask, because a lot of me doing this podcast is honestly scratching my own itch. I, like you, I'm always trying to seek out
Yeah.
what people are doing that we can steal and include. So one thing that my team's been talking about recently has been so the blessing of remote is that everything is very, very like super efficient in that, like, if you're having a meeting, it's for a reason, like, but the curse is that everything can become very transactional.
Mm.
And so I know the common area, like virtual water cooler, is one way that you guys have tried to introduce non-transactional kind of conversation. But how else have you guys bridged the gap and intentionally put a foot forward to just, talk about your lives? And
yeah, so virtual coffee dates was an example I brought up. So on those coffee dates, you don't talk about work. You talk about your lives. You talk about what you're doing with your kids. Talk about your weekends. I do a once a week. I do either a coffee in the morning or a lunch in the afternoon, virtual. So I'm having lunch or coffee. Everybody running a business, you're gonna have coffee. You're gonna have lunch at some point.
right.
30 minutes coffee or lunch with the CEO. I get on, anybody in the company can join, and it's literally me just sharing stories or me asking other people to share a story or share something about their week or whatever. So one of the calls we did recently was, hey, tell me about your Easter traditions. Tell me what your Easter traditions were like. And then the topic came up of like, how the heck did we get a bunny rabbit and eggs put together in the same holiday? And we went on about bunny rabbits and eggs.
Yeah.
Like, how is that even relevant? So you have to create space where, because you're right, it's so efficient. Everything's so efficient, meeting times, work. And in remote work, I believe your employees' brains are actually being drained faster in regards to energy, because they have to focus, yet remote work can create a lot of distractions mentally.
Yeah.
Okay? And so because you're using these apps, you're using tools like Slack, Trello, you're using Zoom, you're using Google Google G Suites, using all these apps that notify. So it's all virtual. They have to focus on those. So their mental capacity is literally being drained. And they say that, I think it's like the second or third energy sucker in your body is when you have to do mental switching between tasks. So knowing that, you have to give space for yourself and your team to just not talk about work.
Yeah.
And it's almost a way of you being able to revive that energy, that mental energy. And especially for your extroverts that You're going to have a few extroverts still working for you that are working remotely. They are craving for that
Yeah.
time because like I said, it's isolating. So I'm an extrovert. So like I filled it in two ways. I do that. And then I have a co-working space, right?
Yep.
So like, that's the way I do it.
Double
But
duty.
yeah,
Yeah.
double duty. But for your employees that are extroverts, like you got to do that time. And you just say, look, have some fun at every staff meeting. As the founder, another thing is I always start every meeting with a story. And it could
Oh,
be a story
nice.
about my week, but I start off with a story. Hey guys, I got to tell you the story, how it relates to what we're doing, or I just want to tell you the story because it's funny or whatever. Um, and then probably the last one is I've made a point to record a Loom video of myself talking about a value of the company. We call them Reconciled family rules, and
Oh,
there are
nice.
non-negotiables.
Yeah.
And so I talk about that family rule, and I point out the employees that really live that out, or the ways they live that out that week that I noticed, or that I heard from a customer maybe
Yeah.
about that. And I send that video out, and it lets them see, myself. And sometimes the video, I'll talk about other things. The other day, one of the employees' birthday, his employee birthday. So one of the things I learned is audio and video are very powerful, right? They can't actually replace text on a screen. The only text that can replace the screen text is a handwritten text. So you
Hmm.
can send personal notes. So I actually do that. But one of the things I do, which I think is even more significant or more powerful, is if there's somebody's birthday or a random thing, I will record just an audio thing. So the other day I sang happy birthday into my phone, and then I put it on Slack for the whole company to hear.
Nice.
I don't do that every time,
Yeah.
but I do that randomly enough where it's endearing, it's funny. It's not like I have a great voice. And but the employees are like, he took the time out of his what they think is Michael's busy day to
Yep.
do that, show that I really care about you guys.
Totally.
So those are all the things, we're experimenting with and trying out. But
That's awesome, man.
yeah.
That is awesome. Next time though, you gotta just auto tune it. Just get some
Yeah.
like heavy auto tune. Yeah, that'll stand out.
That's great.
This is so wise, man. So wise. Really great stuff. I'd love, just kind of as we're starting to wrap up, I'd love to hear about some of your thoughts just on the future of work. Just, obviously a distributed model just can't work for every business or every kind of industry, but there's obviously a shift that's happening. And so what is the next 5, 10, whatever, 20 years, arbitrary future date? What does it look like? How does the future of work look, in terms of distributed models, in terms of teams? Like, what do you think is changing in terms of whatever new businesses that are created out of this, like you alluded to before, like things
Yeah.
that never would have been
I
possible
th-
before? Where's
man,
this all going?
Yeah, I think the opportunity, man, it's humongous. As more and more companies realize that as knowledge work becomes the driving force at the high end of the economy, and as artificial intelligence takes over all of the tasks, the admin work, even bookkeeping, it's disrupting bookkeeping.
Mhm.
We're having to go to higher value knowledge work, or you have to shift. You either have to do that, or you have to shift down to manual work like plumbing and other things that take your hands and a skill and knowledge. So I think distributed teams, there's going to be some really interesting opportunities. I think the ability to virtually experience one another is going to happen,
Mhm.
where this podcast, instead of two different backgrounds, we're actually probably going to feel like we're in the same room, and we're going to actually see each other's bodies somehow.
Yeah.
And we might even be able to sense and touch one another's hands somehow, or sense that we're there.
Yep.
um, I know of a company working on sensory technology for virtual reality, so you can do that. So it's just really, really,
Wow.
I think really amazing stuff. Um, I think that we're going to get even more efficient, and more people are going to have to leverage emotional intelligence in order to
Mhm.
be successful at this kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, I also believe that I'm a big Andrew Yang follower right now in the presidential race, and so I
Mhm.
think a lot of what he's saying about automation is going to
Mhm.
change and transform most first world economies, modern
Mhm.
economies, and we're going to have to figure out what task or what things can we build that we don't value right now, but we will because of it. And
Interesting.
so I think that'll be very interesting. You're going to have more companies open to the idea of offshoring And
Mhm.
it's funny, right now we're actually not. A lot of my competitors do offshore to the Philippines or India.
Yep.
We're gonna see a lot of companies become comfortable, and because these tools now allow very, very good populations of people in the Philippines who, because of this, their accents are actually getting less and less discernible,
Yeah.
and you actually think it's just, somebody, in California or somebody, in Arizona. So the accents are gone. Their ability to work is efficient. The cost is different. It actually is going to increase the cost of living in a lot of these
Hmm.
cheaper places. I think wages and cost of living are going to go up because
Wow.
now a Westerner is going to move to Philippines or to Bali or to
Mhm.
Thailand and work from there and build their company there. It's a big win for third world countries. I really do. It's gonna attract wealthy entrepreneurs to start their companies anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
So that's what's very interesting to me, to see the kinds of companies that are going to pop up, and the opportunities we're going to have to do more and more things remotely and online. Um, so that's one of my other businesses I launched just a couple months ago. Is we're doing basically the same model but for HR. So we're doing HR services online.
It's awesome.
And I think that could scale big or bigger than accounting, because HR is
Yeah.
still not automatable yet. It involves people, right? It
Sure.
involves,
Yeah.
so we're still trying to figure that piece out. And since people are probably going to be our biggest asset going forward for a long time, is
Mhm.
how smart are your people and their knowledge. We're going to have to figure out how to utilize them most efficiently, and how to build their emotional intelligence. And that's the weakest part of our workforce.
Mhm.
Emotional intelligence is not strong in most of our workforce. So we actually have to increase it,
Yeah.
and figure out how to do that.
Man.
Yeah.
So one of my last questions for you then, what would you advise somebody who's starting their company now? They know they want to do a distributed model. Let's say it's them and a partner or them alone. What do they need to do now to build something that will scale?
That's great. So a few things. One is define as if yourself for yourself, or for your two partners, define the activity or task for your business, the area of responsibility for your business that you're going to provide the most value in, right? So whether it's sales, marketing, HR, managing, doing the actual delivery work, firing clients, hiring people, whatever it is, that you got to define that value, and set up and structure your company so that you start documenting how all the other things that you want to find a replacement for eventually. Start documenting how you do it. Find the replacement as fast as possible, try to grow as fast as possible, and give it to somebody better who's going to be better at it,
Mm.
and they're going to make it even better than you are. And so delegation, outside of finances, delegation is probably the second weakest thing for entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs are control freaks. Many of us are. We don't trust people, and so if you can learn to delegate and give away the things you're terrible at, and most of us are terrible at a lot of things, and we're great at a lot of things. So the things you're terrible at, give those away to people that are great at it. And start on day one meeting virtually.
Mm.
Even if your first few employees you have in an office, say, hey, let's start working 2 or 3 days a week from home. Let's start this.
Nice.
Let's make it so that we're not tied to this lease in this building, or tied to this coffee shop. Let's make it work. And then as we grow and scale, that way we can already know we're set up to grow and scale in that way.
And so wise words from a guy who's been on the front lines, for the last few years doing this. So I really appreciate you sharing with us, man. This is really good. A lot of this was new for me, even though we've walked
Yeah.
together now for like a few years. That's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Um, where can people find you if they want to reach out, ask questions, use Reconciled, and
Yeah.
then the other name of the company, the HR company?
Humanly. Yep. Humanly.
Humanly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So they can go to getreconciled.co, getreconciled.co. If you want to learn about Humanly and you have HR needs, Humanly without an A. So HUMNLY.com, humanly.com. And you can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook. I have a Friday night show I do called Friday Night Live with Accountants on Facebook Live. So you can catch me there and engage with me there. I'm on LinkedIn as well a lot, so feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. I usually accept almost everybody that's not shady on LinkedIn. So
So if you don't get accepted, something's wrong with your
yeah,
profile.
exactly. Yeah. So yeah, feel free to connect. I love sharing. I love talking. I love meeting new people. On my extroversion score, I'm a 90%. So I love connecting with new people and meeting new people. So yeah, happy to connect with anybody that reaches out.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Michael.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Josh.